Hello, quilters. We're ready for feather lesson 5. I'm really excited to work on this one. I've been feather quilting all week, and I'm planning on even more. Have you been falling in love with feathers as we've been going, and noticing where they can go on other quilts? Hopefully, hopefully this has inspired you to put some time into forwarding yourself on your feather journey. Feathers aren't something that have occurred naturally for me. I've met a few people who can just sit down and suddenly start quilting feathers, but I wasn't one of them. I had to work at them, and I don't take it for granted that I can sit down at a quilt and start feathering on it. So it's my joy to take you through step by step how I learned how I taught myself how to make feathers, and how I've taught many thousands of others how to make feathers. So, lesson 1 was the form of feathers, how to form a feather. Lesson 2 was putting feathers on a spine. Lesson 3 was flexible feathers. Lesson 4 was traditional feathers on a wreath. And today is flexible feathers on a wreath. So, I'm excited to talk to you about that. Flexible feathers have a little bit of a different, have a different rhythm to them. And let me just turn on some comments here because I see them. Oh, thank you for my birthday, my belated birthday. Yes, my birthday was at the beginning of the month, and it was fabulous. I went to Boston with my children, their spouses, and my grandchildren, and my husband. And I walked my feet off and was fabulous. So as I kept going through Boston, as we were doing various things, I would turn to my husband and I said, "You could be pushing a wheelchair for this," because we weren't sure I'd be able to be back on my feet and functional again. So we celebrated my birthday in a big way, just enjoying all the little things like walking around Boston. So, hello in sunny South Carolina. Hopefully, it's warmer now. And hello. Let's see. Uh, so, let's talk about how to form a flexible feather. And I don't really have a great name for them. I call them flexible feathers. It's the best I can do. Let me share a screen so I can start drawing for you. Okay, I think this is it here. And many people ask what my drawing program is. It's it's a Word document and a pen. So I call it a flexible feather because it bends itself into different places. Let's see. My pens haven't been working well on my new computer screen. So if it cuts out, I apologize. But I do have a video of me quilting this. Now, on a traditional feathered wreath, the feathers will be the same size as each other and hug the spine. With the flexible feathers, what they're going to do is work and fill the entire block. So no background quilting is required. It's a little bit more modern of a look. I like it because it doesn't require the background quilting. It might be my favorite feather, but I'm not sure. I might like the traditional one too. We'll see. So, whenever you start quilting a feathered wreath, I start quilting at 7 o'clock because I'm right handed. And if you don't understand how that works, it's because I put my hand on a template here and stitch the circle. And I'm able to do that without picking up my hand. So I can make an entire circle without moving my hand. If you're left-handed, you may start at 4 o'clock. You can really start anywhere. You're just don't let go of the template if you're stitching around a template. Now, whenever I start at 7 o'clock, I go clockwise, just a personal choice of mine. But what I don't do is I don't go into the corner. I start on a short edge. Doesn't matter which one, but I start on a short edge. The corners I have to work my way into. So I have said that feathers are when you stitch up and around a circle and back down to the spine. So I'm going to do that here, up around the circle, back down to the spine. But all of the circles are out on the edge of the block. Up and around, up and around. And then I'm going to go up and into a corner and back down. I apologize, my pen's not working very well on my screen right now. So up around a circle and back down, and then into the corner. And keep going, and keep going, and then into the corner. And into the corner and close it. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second to check for comments. Come back so I can see you. Hello, it's great to be back. So thanks for that. It's nice to see you back. It's great to be back. Now, whenever I stitch those feathers, I stitch around the outside, and I stitch one feather at a time. Not a single one of those feathers looks like a magical feather. It doesn't go, oh, this is the perfect teardrop. They look like bratwurst. But they play well together and give the illusion of feathers. And the other thing I want to say about my drawings is I don't draw very well. I've spent 20 years, what years is 2023? So I've spent 23, 24 years machine quilting on a long arm and home machines, as well as, actually it's been a little longer than that. I've spent all those years, 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week machine quilting. If I'd spent that much time practicing drawing, I'd be much better at drawing. So I hear often, just doodle, 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 and if you can't draw it, you can't quilt it. Well, I can't draw it, but I can quilt it. So let me be a beacon of hope for you. If you can draw it, you're light years ahead of the rest of us. But if you are drawing impaired, like I am, let me be a beacon of hope. So I'm going to go back, share my screen, and show you how to quilt the inside feathers. So what I do is I figure out where the center is, and I haven't cut my thread yet, so I'm still right where I started. So I went around the circle once, went around all the feathers once, and now I'm going to go around the inside feathers. So I'm going to go take one feather all the way into the center, and then I'm going to do a little feather and a little bigger feather, and a little feather and a little bigger feather, little bigger, little bigger, little bigger, and it works its way around and looks super duper cool. I fell in love with these feathers once I finally figured it out, because I was taught it, and I'm sure the teacher was great. I was not great. It was really challenging for me to learn it, so I had to really think about different ways to learn it, and that's how I teach it. So those are the feathers that I do on the flexible feathers. In my feather class, my Machine Quilted Feathers class, which is on sale through the end of the month, which happens to be today. So if you want to get that feather class, get in while it's on sale, or if you want to join As The Bobbin Turns, get in on that sale today. It's at the end of the month in New York, in the United States, and I probably won't turn it off till sometime tomorrow morning, so you can get in there. So in the feather class, that's one of the flexible feathers I teach, and I teach it on a quilt pattern that's called Second Inning, and it is a broken dishes pattern. So every other block is a traditional feather and a flexible feather, traditional, flexible, and it works its way through the quilt. But I do all of the entire class on a home sewing machine. For a couple reasons. Home sewing machines are more understandable to more people. People who have home sewing machines might have trouble converting long arm lessons to home machine quilting, but people who have long arms can have an easier time translating home machine quilting videos to long arms. So I have a video for you, and you'll see that at times the machine is in the way of what I'm filming, which is the other reason it's great to quilt on a home sewing machine when you film, because the machine doesn't move and you can set the camera up once. So let me share the screen and pull up that video. Here we go. So the quilt here that I'm showing this on is called Picnic Patch, and it is the same quilt that's behind me, which you'll see when I turn the screen share off. It's one of my favorite quilts to make, and I've made it with traditional feathers. I've quilted it with flexible feathers. This is Amy Friend's fabric line. I forget the name of it, but it's based on her time she lived in London. So the fabrics were fantastic. I took a stencil. So this is a concentric circle stencil instead of using a ruler to quilt around a circle template. So let's get the video going. Why is there no sound? It was playing sound before you were here. I'm so sorry. Okay, there's no sound. So I am putting this stencil on, and I'm using a pounce pad. And I'm swiping it over. When you use pounce, you don't bang it on the stencil, you swipe it over. And then I came up with this concentric circle bullseye. This is blue powder, so it'll need to be washed off. You could also use a stencil, a template to quilt around. So it's your choice. So again, you can start stitching that. I talk with my hands. And I used that concentric circle stencil to help position my feathers. So here I am. You'll see why I start at 7:30 on a clock, because I can put my hand on the template, stitch around it, and by moving my wrist, I can get the entire circle without having to lift my hand. I can do it in one try. So now I'm on the side, and I'm going to work on one of the sides, top or bottom, and I'm going to start stitching on the sides rather than on the corners. And up around the circle and back. And then all the way into the corner. When I do not get concerned that they're the same number of feathers on one side of the square as another, I just try to make them fit. So what I can do is the same as whenever I'm joining a traditional feathered wreath. As I get close to an edge, I can decide how many feathers are going to get me into the corner. So I could stop here and look at it and say, oh, that's 3 feathers. So 1, 2, oh, I guess I decided 4 on that one. 4. So I've stitched all the way around. And why I use this concentric circle, it's pretty cool. Wait till you see how it works in the inside of a feather. So I'm going to take my first feather and curl it all the way into the center and come back. And then I'm going to make a feather up to the first line, up to the second line, up to the third line. So a little feather, a little bigger feather, a little bigger feather, and a biggest feather. And I'm going to repeat that all the way around. And then a little one, a little bigger one, up to the third line, and my feather's done. And there is my block. There you go. So that's how I stitch a flexible feather block, flexible feathered wreath in a block. Let me stop sharing and come back and talk to you. Hello, let's see. My feathers were ugly before I enrolled in Debbie's feather course. Now they're much better. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm really proud of that course. I know I can teach feathers because I know what it's like to not be able to stitch them. I had to learn too. See another comment. I agree that drawing feathers is hard, but I found it does help with muscle memory. I just find it helps to practice what it is you're planning on doing. I don't plan on drawing feathers for a living, even though I do draw feathers. I would prefer to quilt them. I want them to look good on a quilt. I'm not so excited. It's not as important to me they look good on a page. Let's see another comment here. My most difficult feathers are the one in the circle, but they're much better after taking Debbie's feather class. And the quilt was fun to make. Oh, thank you. I had fun making it too. That quilt went to live with a gentleman at my church who's got leukemia. He's been home for 3 years because he's had bone marrow transplant and all of that. But it was a hug that I couldn't give him because I haven't been able to see him. I gave away a lot of my quilts to folks that I couldn't hug during the pandemic. So that's how I quilt flexible feathers. And again, if you take the feather class, there's a pattern for a quilt in lesson 1, which is made from a jelly roll. And then it's a place to practice on it, a little quilt that you can practice on. In lesson 2, it is a little note card holder. It's a place to quilt your feathers on a spine. Lesson 3, there's a pattern for a bench pillow. Lessons 4 and 5, there's a pattern for a quilt that's broken dishes. And then, so I put out a new pattern every lesson, every other lesson in the class to give you something to make and practice it on. Because practicing on plain fabric or scrap fabric doesn't give you the same experience because you're not working with seam allowances. You're not working with a defined area as you are when it's on a quilt. But also, when it's on a quilt, by the time you're done with the quilt, you're much better at it than you were at the beginning, and then you can give it away to someone. If you're someone who's really judgy about your own feathers and go, well, my feathers don't look very good, practice it on a quilt and then give it away. There's so many people that could use a hug. So again, today's the last day that the feather class is on sale, but I probably won't turn it off till sometime tomorrow morning to turn off the lower priced class. I encourage you to take the class, make the projects, work through it step by step, and your feathers will improve as you go. You are not going to master feathers right off. I mean, you might, and hats off to you if you do, but it's something that's worth taking the work on. But I want to show you a few things that I've been working on because this is my first week that I've really been home all year and in my sewing room and making things. So I finished this quilt yesterday. Let's see if I can get it to show up. So this is that same picnic patch quilt. Let me raise my table up. So these are traditional feathers that I've stitched on here, but I'm not sure that the light has hit it properly. So I apologize that it's not getting the full impact. I did just finish it. It is feathered wreaths, traditional feathered wreaths, and traditional feathers on the spine. So I just finished the binding right before I started film, right before this went live. So one of my standard wedding quilts that's going to be mailed off to a wedding that I am late for a wedding present on. Now, the second inning quilt pattern that we're talking about, this is it. This is second inning, and it's great big broken dishes blocks. And I took 16 fat quarters of fossil ferns. I don't know if you love fossil fern fabrics like I love fossil fern fabrics, but I do have a bolt of every color made, and there's like 150, 140, 160 of them, a lot. So I pulled out 16 blues and matched them together. And they are just really nice and muted. And as I was looking at this, I'll sit down and talk to you again. In the class, I talk about how to make a feather in the block if the block is bigger than you can quilt. And why would a block be bigger than you could quilt? If you're quilting on a long arm, this is a 16-inch block. If you're quilting on, let's say, the Handy Quilter Moxie, which is only, I think it's a 15-inch throat, which means you're only going to quilt about 12 inches in there. And after that, you're going to hit the top bar and the bottom bar. The machine's just not, you're not going to be able to quilt 16 inches at once. The problem I have is my arms are long enough. I'm a fairly tall woman and I have fairly long arms. So I can reach to quilt a 20-inch block. I can't see to quilt a 20-inch block. So there are some hints in the feather class that talk about how to put a feather in a block if the block is bigger than you can quilt. It can also be if you're just not comfortable. Sometimes we're comfortable quilting at different scales. Some people are comfortable quilting bigger things. Some people are comfortable quilting smaller things. So if you're comfortable on a smaller scale, what do you do if you're really comfortable with smaller feathers but have a big block? So I talk about that. And that's something that's in the feather class. Oh, yummy fabric. Yes. The fossil ferns are yummy, yummy fabric. I can cut fat quarters of this. This is 16 fat quarters. So they may end up on my website. Check my newsletter by the end. It'll hopefully be out by Friday with all of the new updates for this week. Because I do have an entire dining room full of fossil fern fabrics. So I was thinking of quilting this one differently than the one in the class. I thought I would just pop a traditional feathered wreath in the center of each block and then do background quilting around it. I do use wool batting whenever I do this because the wool has some loft to it. And that way the feathers puff up and the background quilting brings it down. And that way the quilting really shows. I'm going to grab the quilt I just took down because the feathers are truly yummy on here, but it's up to the light, and it's a weird time of day here in the forest where I live. So the feathers are on here, and you can see they're popping out. And the feather, let's see, a feather border is, there we go. The feathered spine is in the border as well. It's just difficult with light. I live on the Appalachian Trail in New York. I have walnut paneling in my sewing room, which is the great room of my house. And I live under the canopy of the trees. So the sun sets around 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. That's when it goes behind the trees. So yeah, light is a challenge. I'm not going to mail this quilt off to its owner tomorrow because I'm hoping to get some glamour shots outside, and that will be in the newsletter, and it will also be on a blog post. My blog is at the bottom of my website, so debbiebrownquilts.com. Scroll to the bottom. And if you're not a subscriber to my newsletter, debbiebrownquilts.com, scroll to the bottom and subscribe to my email. Let's see. You used Quilter's Dream Puff, and it was great. I agree. I prefer wool. Again, I also prefer tea to coffee. It's a preference. I prefer wool, but if I'm making a quilt for someone who has a wool allergy, Quilter's Dream Puff is my first choice. Well, it's my second choice after Quilter's Dream Wool. But if I can't use the wool, I would use the Quilter's Dream Puff. It's a little lighter. It doesn't have quite the heft that the wool has, but it's lovely. And as far as recommending Quilter's Dream batting, they're the one company that has never given me free batting. I have gotten free batting from every other company out there. And I use the free battings when I get them, but when I buy batting, I buy it from Quilter's Dream. So I've given them a lot of money. I'm just a really happy customer, and I really love their product. So no links, no affiliate links. I don't make money on this. It just happens to be what I enjoy using. So I hope to base this up tonight. I'm married to a video gamer, and tonight is one of his video game appointments with some family. And so I'm on my own tonight. I'll probably base this up so I can get started quilting. So follow on social media at Debbie Brown Quilts on all social media. If you spell my name right, Debbie with a Y, and you'll see me quilting this one. I have one more quilt to show you on the board. It's like I staged this for you. There we go. So this is my latest free pattern in my color blocks class. So in addition to the feather quilting that I'm doing, I also design color blocks. Color blocks are 16 patches, and I've made one out of orange and blues. And so these are all made out of scrap 2.5-inch squares that I've sewn together. And I've designed about 100 patterns of what to do, starting with a 16 patch made from all of the scraps. This one is called Celebrate. And the fabric in the background says happy. The border, it says happy. So that'll be in the newsletter as well. The fun thing about doing all the color blocks is I started this project early in the pandemic. So I think in January of 2021, I started it, and people signed up for it. I have thousands and thousands of people quilting along. But what they didn't know is I was tricking them into learning how to machine quilt, because I do post machine quilting videos of each quilt. So this is the latest one, and hopefully tomorrow afternoon, I will be filming how to do this and get this out for you by the end of the week. So that's what I have going on new here. Follow along with the feathers, the feather along. Next week, we'll have another lesson that will go along with the feather class, lesson 6, that will be on Wednesday night. I'll talk about generally what's new at DebbieBrownQuilts.com. Tuesday afternoon at 2:30, either on YouTube or at Debbie Brown Quilts Facebook page. I will be back here again next Wednesday night, New York time, 7 o'clock, and I will be going over lesson 6 and showing you what other new quilts and projects I have going on. So I'm going to leave it for another second, a couple seconds, to see if any last questions came in. But I want to thank you for feathering along. I'm having so much fun going through and remaking some of the projects and doing feathers. It's just been a great step back into quilting for me. So I don't see any new questions coming up. If you do have new questions, put them in the Debbie Brown Quilts Debbie Brown Quilts Machine. Where am I? Debbie Brown's Machine Quilting Studio Facebook group. And you can also contact me through any social media at Debbie Brown Quilts. So I will see you online. Happy quilting, everyone. Take some time for yourself, and quilt whatever makes you happy. So if making some simple scrap blocks makes you happy, do that. If challenging yourself to learn some new feathers, do that. Let's see, you are a house of fire. Yes, this is me back to full energy after 5 months of COVID and recovery. So I'm really happy to come back. So thanks, everyone, and I will see you again next week. Happy quilting.